we could all agree that the world is a big place. It's kind of huge. And the more that I play GeoGuessr, the more that I realize that my knowledge of the world is the opposite of big. It is very, very small. So small that I'll be honest with you all, I genuinely don't know what the world's smallest country is. If you're new to the channel, my name is Joey, and I make videos about the places that I find when I play GeoGuessr. So let's watch a round that I recently played, and then afterwards, once I've done a huge amount of Googling, I'll show you everything that I learned, everything that I got wrong, and all of the interesting stuff that I find along the way. First, let's watch a round that I played earlier. Wow. Okay, wow. I'm blind. The sun is in the south, so we're most likely northern hemisphere. I mean, I suppose we're feeling Canada, right? This feels very Canadian. I don't know how to articulate why. Now, looking at the road signs, we've got a solid white line, dashed white line, solid double yellow line, single white line that's solid, and then this concrete barrier. See if we can have a closer look at this sign, 60. This looks spectacular. Now, the issue that we have is Canada is huge, and I don't really know all too well how to region guess Canada once we get out into the sticks here. Now, I think I'm going with like Winnipeg at the moment. That doesn't help me. We've got 1 minute to find a better clue. I feel I just drove past a sign that could have helped me out, but I've committed. Wow. Wow. This doesn't look real. How spectacular. What a phenomenal drive this must be. Maximum 80. Is it Canada where it says maximum? Oh, I know that there is a difference between US and Canada where one will say maximum and one won't. And under pressure, can't remember which one is which, but I think, wow, sorry, I'm also just really blown away with the natural beauty here. Wow. This must be a phenomenal drive. So we're driving north. I mean, I think I am thinking around here, like Calgary, Banff. I mean, Banff isn't a bad shout. This road kind of goes north. Wow! Yes! 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 Well, that's made my day. I don't know if I'm going to make a video out of this, but that is... Oh, yes! Okay, so we were actually not too far away in the end, but I will hold my hands up. I did get quite a lot wrong in this round. Now, first things first, we weren't quite in Banff National Park, or even the province of Alberta. We were just on the other side of the border in Kootenay National Park in British Columbia. Now, the Canadian Rockies are pretty big. How big? About 180,000 square kilometers, which is about the same size as Cambodia or North Dakota. But the Canadian Rockies only make up a section of the North American Rockies, which range from Alaska through northern Alberta and British Columbia, down through the United States Rocky Mountain range of Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico, and then finishing in the Sierra Madre Oriental mountain range in Mexico. Now together, they're known as the Northern American Cordillera, which is both a term I'd never heard before, but also a word I'd never heard before. Cordillera, coming from the Spanish word cordilla, meaning rope or string, which does make sense, as if you were really far away looking at that mountain range from space and you squinted a little bit, it would look like a little rope or a string. Now, the Canadian Rockies have 2,283 named peaks, with thousands more unnamed peaks, and it kind of blows my mind that here we are, living in the future, and yet there are huge swathes of land that are still technically unnamed. Now in the game, we saw a couple of mountains. First was this one over here, which I think is the lowest sprawling base of Mount Docking. And then after that, we saw Mount Harkin, and then I think Mount Selkirk, and in the distance, I think this is Catlin Peak. Now Mount Harkin, sitting in the middle, stands 2,979 meters tall, and it is named after James Bernard Harkin, the founder of the National Park Service of Canada. Harkin became Canada's first National Parks Commissioner in 1911, and he established 11 new national parks throughout his career. And I think it's really charming that this mountain range is located in a particularly scenic area off Highway 93, also known as the Banff-Windermere Highway, also known as one of the most beautiful scenic drives in the world. But having his peak named here on this specific road with a huge amount of traffic is a really lovely, touching way to preserve and dedicate Harkin's legacy. Now, I did go down a bit of a rabbit hole researching both named and unnamed mountains in Canada, and some of the more interestingly named mountains are Gong Mountain, which disappointingly doesn't look like a gong, Throne Mountain, which apparently looks like a throne, and then Resplendent Mountain, which sits in the Rainbow Range, and it just should be a Super Mario level. Now, there are currently 2,283 named peaks, but in Canada, a couple of years ago, there was 2,284, but in 2022, Canada decided to unname a mountain, Mount Patan, coincidentally only 55 kilometers to the southeast of where we were on the map. But why did Canada unname a mountain? Well, it was named after Philippe Pétain, whose career was described by legendary Frenchman Charles de Gaulle as successfully banal, then glorious, then deplorable. So Philippe Pétain was successfully banal in his career as a German-French soldier and officer for 25 years. His career was then glorious during the First World War, where he successfully led the Battle of Verdun, and he was such a hero that in 1918, once the war had concluded, the Canadian government named a mountain after him. But the deplorable final chapter of his career came during the Second World War, when, as the head of the French state, Pétain ceded northern and western France to Nazi Germany and established his own collaborationist Vichy France regime. Now, so far, the Canadian government are yet to rename the mountain, and personally, I think it's a lot more powerful and makes a much bigger statement to not rename it and to just leave it unnamed. Interestingly, one final fact in this little sidetrack rabbit hole, Charles de Gaulle actually served under Pétain as a soldier in 1911, and then in 1944, 31 years later, he actually succeeded him as the boss of as the head of the French state. Sorry, I nearly said boss, head of the French state. Anyway, an interesting circle of life and history. But yeah, I've gone on a tangent. I need to get this video back on track. Mountains and French war heroes and villains aren't really useful in GeoGuessr unless you've somehow memorized every peak in Western Canada. So let's talk about the clues that actually mattered. So speed limit signs and using them to tell Canada and America apart. Now, we saw this speed limit sign which says the words maximum, and I was unsure at the time of filming. I was doubting myself. I couldn't quite remember which one is which, but this is the key to tell America and Canada apart, as America has a similar sign but without the words maximum. Instead, it will say speed limit. Now, the way that I'm going to try and remember this is that maximum means the same in both English and French, the two most commonly spoken languages in Canada. Whereas speed limit, translating into French, is limitation de vitesse. And for those of you who've heard of the football team, Vitesse Arnhem, you now know that it means Arnhem speed, which I didn't know when I started researching this video. Now, another big difference between Canada and America with speed limit signs is that America uses miles per hour and Canada uses kilometers per hour. So the numbers will often be higher in Canada. So I'm just going to remember that as Canada is higher in latitude, longitude, latitude. Oh, I'm not sure now. Canada is above America on a map, so it's higher up. That's how I'm remembering it. Now, Canadian speed limits are also always divisible by 10, so if you see any number ending in a 5, you immediately know that you're in America. Now, we also saw this place of interest sign, or technically it's called a scenic lookout sign, and it is commonly used on Canadian highways, although in Quebec in the east, I did have a look around and I did find some similar signs, but with a brown background instead of blue. Interestingly, having done a cursory amount of research, this same sign also appears to be used in New Zealand in both blue and brown. So if you could work out which hemisphere you're in by looking at the sun, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, probably in Canada, Southern Hemisphere, probably in New Zealand. Now, looking at the road markings and cross-referencing those with the resources available on Plunkett.net, it does appear that these road markings with a solid double yellow center line are also very, very common in the United States. So in this particular instance, not that much use to us here. Having said that, there was one thing right next to those road markings that could have really helped us narrow down where we were, had I have known of this fact's existence before playing the game. And that is the concrete barriers flanking the majority of the road. Now, British Columbia predominantly uses concrete barriers, known as Jersey barriers in the trade, and instead of more common metal guardrails. And I've looked into this, I'm quite surprised that they're not used more frequently around the world, because the big advantage of these solid concrete barriers are that they redirect vehicles safely upon impact. And if you look and you can see the angled base at the bottom, this is designed to encourage the colliding vehicle's wheels to raise up on the barrier, dissipating the energy and redirecting the vehicle back parallel to the road. So if you see a Jersey barrier and a sign that says maximum 80, British Columbia should be the starting point of your guess. Now, at one point I said I thought we might be in Winnipeg, which might just be the dumbest thing I've said in this channel's short history so far, because it will get dumber. And let me tell you why, because we were looking at mountains and Winnipeg is flat and everything around Winnipeg is flat. I'm calling it Winnipancake just to try and drill into myself just how flat Winnipeg is. I've been annoyed all week when I said Winnipeg, when I was clearly looking at a mountain range. Now, I'm pretty confident that I meant to say Calgary, but on this channel I'm leaving my mistakes in because I want to use them as an opportunity for us all to learn. I'm not a GeoGuessr wizard, far from it. I just like learning about why I like learning about why I'm wrong and writing my mistakes, and making these videos is the best way for all of this stuff to actually stay in my brain. Now, I drove north in the game, but if we'd have driven south, we would have come across this incredible road that drives through the Sinclair Canyon. And if we'd have continued through the Sinclair Canyon, we would have come across a little town called Radium Hot Springs. And as you might expect for a place called Radium Hot Springs, there are several natural hot springs in the area and hot pools containing trace amounts of radon in the water, radon being a decay product of radium. Now, as a hypochondriac, radon in a swimming pool immediately sets every alarm bell ringing for me. And the Radium Hot Springs website makes no mention of the radon in the water. Instead, they say the hot spring pools are contained with a naturally heated water containing a unique blend of scentless minerals. Not 100% sure on what radon or radium actually are, but when I was a kid, 1 in 5 action movies had the threat of radiation poisoning, and ever since then I've been terrified of that word. Now, I did check TripAdvisor, Parks.Canada and Expedia, and no one addressed the radon in the bathing water. It was only when visiting my old friend Wikipedia that I was reassured that the radiation dosage from being in the pools was inconsequential. Now, a 2021 survey by Expedia voted Radium Hot Springs as the friendliest town in Canada. And being crowned the friendliest anything in Canada is quite the achievement, as they are already the friendliest nation in the world. So to be the friendliest town in the friendliest country is such an impressive achievement, but also, I think it's quite suspicious. What makes them the friendliest town in the world? Well, maybe, just maybe, hear me out on this, I think there's something in the water.